Chapter 7. The Promise.
Zentran entered the reception area of Alpha 1, putting aside childhood recollections. Pandemonium reigned. 2 security lookalikes lay smouldering on the floor. Other lookalikes, attending to the burnt-out units, also tried to get Gawkers moving. He strode boldly to the lift, bypassing the confusion. There was no need to gently encourage them to let him pass without checking his credentials. He smiled. Zach's encouragement had been considerable, reducing them to smouldering waste. More destroyed lookalikes were carried past him as he entered the lift. An instant later, he emerged with his blank stare intact, which transformed to a smile as he reached an outer office. Behind a council communications terminal sat his lady. She'd grown into a stunning woman.
Hello, Phora.
She looked at him in amazement.
Zen! Hi!
She hadn't lost her girly smile.
The commotion down level isn't your doing, is it?
Zentran shook his head.
What's going on?
The comm lines are going crazy. Someone tried to access the council's computer files and was detected. A couple of guards were destroyed on his way out.
Or her way out?
She looked at him wryly.
You know I wouldn't do that.
I know you wouldn't. It was Zach.
She nodded knowingly.
Hang on for a moment, Zen. I'm almost finished for the sequence and we can be out of here. It would be safer if I met you in the air car pad.
Zentran located the air car pad floor. Her air car wasn't hard to find, and the doors weren't locked. They didn't need to be. Although suppressed for generations, they were a proud people, once a great race. No one would sink low enough to steal. He engaged the car's magnetic propulsion drive and watched the readout on the gravitational gauge approach 0. He could tell that Phora was close and opened the passenger side door. Phora climbed in as the gauge reached 0 and the all systems ready light flashed. They looked at each other quietly for a while before she nestled up against him. Checking the car's proximity sensor as to outside traffic, he maneuvered the air car to the floor exit high up in the Alpha 1 building. With the skill of a spaceflight captain, he accelerated from the building into the traffic flow. Their destination was irrelevant to Phora. Anywhere with Zentran would be fine. Verbalizing their thoughts also didn't matter. Phora knew Zentran would communicate what was on his mind when he was ready. They reached the overhead sun zone airspace. A freshwater sea glistened in the sunlight below them. Zentran set the air car down on a pad near a resort with a tropical beach. They climbed out and made their way hand in hand up synthetic marble stairs to an open balcony. At a table overlooking the sea, they sat down and looked into each other's eyes. It had been a long time since they'd been able to share their thoughts. She remembered times in the dark zone before Zentran had gone away.
I remember them too.
Zentran's thoughts were clearer than words. Phora had never been back to the dark zone since Zentran's space mission had taken him away. Without him, it wouldn't have been the same.
Are you still afraid to use your power?
I'm afraid of losing control.
To control it, you need to use it. I think you're stronger than Zach and me.
I know, but what if I cause a disaster?
Zentran had no answer. He understood the extent of her fear, of something possibly regretted from a bygone lifetime. Phora was first to verbalize.
And what does Captain Zentran require of this woman?
Her voice sparkled like the freshwater sea.
He requires that she submit to the ceremony of lifelong joining.
Zentran's straight face brought about Phora's suppressed giggle. He continued.
Until breath ceases.
Phora laughed.
You're an incredible romantic, Zen. You really are.
Her attempt to sidestep the issue was unsuccessful. On a higher communication level, he had his answer. She leaned across the table and kissed him. No date was set, just an affirmation.
One day.
Was his verbal promise.
One day.
Was hers. The pledge could have been a written contract, stamped, sealed, and filed in duplicate in their memory, referenced by this time and sequence on Delta 4b in the overhead sun zone. Zentran had imagined this moment frequently while he'd been away. Unbeknown to him, in the privacy of her quarters, Phora also had. The omitted date for the nuptials didn't seem to matter. They knew that together they'd be easily discovered by the improved realm-sensitive lookalikes. He thought about the devastation Zack had caused earlier.
You're just as strong as Zack, but there's too many of them. Even together, we wouldn't make it.
Perhaps with you we could.
I don't know. Perhaps. But a lot of innocent people would succumb.
I'm concerned about that too.
Phora decided to speak for the sake of onlookers.
Zack operates boldly. Too boldly, but we know we can count on him. Remember when we first met? You were angry that he'd impulsively brought me to your retreat in the dark zone.
Don't remind me.
You were right to be concerned. He lives by instinct, and he's been lucky. Except for that time when he was caught out at instruction class.
Our first meeting was good though. Good but embarrassing.
It was rather funny at the time, you standing there lost for words.
At first I thought you were merely one of Zack's indulgences.
I know.
She paused for a moment, remembering the experience.
I was surprised to find out who you really were. I fell for you straight away.
She reached across the table and took his hand.
Remember the pools below your stone house? And swimming in the near darkness without clothes?
I remember.
The Qtons were so adorable too.
That was the second time I'd felt the presence of Nakars.
It was as if he was checking whether the Qtons were safe in your care.
No, I think he came to see you.
Why?
Perhaps because your mental strength was starting to show from the exercises we'd been doing. There's an awesome power in you. It shows itself sometimes when you forget to be careful.
And that's what frightens me. Do you think that's why he came?
I think he also has a soft spot for you.
Why do you think that?
When he's around, he seems like a part of me. My feelings for you are amplified, like some of them are coming from him. The picture I think he accidentally let slip of my future.
The one of you in an arena with a broken sword?
Yes, and the golden goddess in the stands holding a sword aloft. I think the golden goddess is you, our future.
Phora laughed.
I'm no goddess.
The picture and the feeling was so real.
Zentran thought about his ex-commanding officer from the Electric Swordsman of Rowan, but didn't mention it. He knew she was Phora, as well as being the golden goddess in the stands of the arena. One from his past, and the other the future. For some reason, Phora had forgotten she'd been his commanding officer. Forgotten she'd summoned him. Nakas had indicated that even she who had summoned him would not be the one to enlighten him. They gazed out from the balcony across the shimmering water and linked their minds. For this brief moment, they were lost in their own universe, free from the troubles of the Confederation and the tragedy of their people. Much later, with considerable reluctance, Zentran took Phora home. It would be too many sequences before they felt safe in making contact again. their different lifestyles would seldom cross, and the earlier events of that sequence had indicated the increased risk of communicating telepathically over long distances. Phora had chosen to work her way up in the council service to gain insight into their mode of operation and possible weaknesses. Being a telecom operative controlling a communication routing desk would make them privy to information they would not otherwise have access to. With the danger of being detected, Zentran hoped the advantage would not outweigh the possible consequences. Zack was different. One was never sure what he was about, one sequence to the next. He lived by his wits, and he would tell you he wouldn't have it any other way. It was the only lifestyle he knew. His carefree persona didn't allow for structured existence. For a while he'd lived on Delta 2, known for its lavish pleasure resorts and tourist attractions. The continuous carnival atmosphere suited him. Perhaps he'd had no other choice. He wouldn't have lasted in the disciplined technical environment of Delta 4B. Zentran had a flight scheduled to freight machinery to Delta 2 in 3 sequences' time. It was a short haul, and he'd take the opportunity to look up his friend. He was also curious of what Zack had been doing, trying to access the council's central computer.